A Ferrari crashes in the darkness. A fashion heir falls from a bridge. A billion-dollar lawsuit pits mother against children, and the Agnelli curse strikes again. Indeed, they call them the Kennedys of Italy, not just for their $13 billion fortune, but for their uncanny ability to transform triumph into tragedy with clockwork precision. In their Lake Como villas, where Gianni Agnelli once entertained Jackie Kennedy herself, the espresso cups still bear the same four-letter logo found on millions of Fiat cars, Juventus jerseys, and Ferrari racing machines that form Italy's industrial backbone. And now, the dynasty that survived fascism, 2 world wars, and economic collapse faces its most intimate enemy. Family blood turned courtroom venom as Margherita Agnelli demands billions allegedly hidden from her inheritance, forcing Italy to witness its royal family's private wounds in public display. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we reveal why the Agnellis earned the comparison of Italy's Kennedys, a family blessed with extraordinary wealth and influence, yet haunted by a seemingly endless series of tragedies that money, power, and connections have proven powerless to prevent. You think you've seen it all when it comes to eccentric billionaires? Meet Gianni Agnelli, the man who routinely leapt from his helicopter directly into the Mediterranean Sea, swam ashore at the world's most exclusive hotel, then casually joined Jackie Kennedy for lunch, while his wife wondered which mistress he was entertaining today. This wasn't a movie scene, but a typical Tuesday for Gianni Agnelli, Italy's most powerful man and the undisputed king of sprezzatura, the art of making extraordinary privilege look effortlessly cool. Today, the Agnelli empire stands at $13.5 billion under the stewardship of Gianni's impeccably groomed grandson, John Elkann, a Harvard-educated, multilingual heir who assumed control at 28 when his uncle conveniently died of rare cancer just as succession questions were becoming awkward. Elkann oversees the family's primary wealth factory, Exor N.V., a Dutch-registered holding company worth $41 billion that controls Ferrari, valued at $33 billion, owns 29% of Stellantis, parent of Fiat, Chrysler, and 12 other car brands, and maintains its tentacles in everything from Christian Louboutin shoes to The Economist magazine. Juventus Football Club, the 36-time Italian champions, remains firmly in Agnelli hands through Andrea Agnelli, who serves as chairman and regularly entertains himself by poaching star players from less fortunate teams the way normal people upgrade their mobile phones. Their real estate portfolio makes British royalty look like council estate residents. Villa Fresco, a 12-acre Turin compound with private helipad. A modernist concrete fortress overlooking St. Moritz's Lake, a 1920s Corsican villa perched above the Mediterranean, and a Marrakesh compound so exclusive it's deliberately omitted from tourist maps. At their Villa Perosa country estate, where they've hosted everyone from Hollywood royalty to actual royalty, sits a private chapel containing the family mausoleum adorned with marble sculptures that would make Michelangelo question his life choices. Their art collection spans 636 masterpieces by Picasso, Monet, and Bacon, worth billions. Assets now central to a family legal bloodbath where Gianni's daughter Margherita is suing her own children with the kind of viciousness normally reserved for succession scriptwriters. The Agnelli financial labyrinth spans Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Switzerland with the precision of a Swiss watch, including the Giovanni Agnelli BV Foundation that maintains family control while ensuring tax bills remain mysteriously smaller than the average teacher's salary. Their transportation collection includes Ferraris so rare even Saudi princes can't acquire them, vintage Fiat prototypes never released to peasants, and handcrafted Riva boats with special Agnelli modifications for impromptu Mediterranean adventures with supermodels half their age. Less publicly discussed are the current generation's romantic entanglements, continuing Gianni's tradition of high-profile affairs conducted with such calculated nonchalance that even Italian tabloids, which would normally sacrifice their firstborns for such gossip, hesitate to publish the details. In a nation where appearances matter more than oxygen, the Agnellis have perfected walking the line between flaunting their Jupiter-sized wealth and maintaining just enough restraint to be worshipped rather than guillotined. A balancing act that has kept them atop Italy's social Everest through war, recession, and political revolutions. And to think this entire opera of wealth, glamour, power, and tragedy began with a single entrepreneurial visionary who looked at horses pulling carriages and thought, "I can do better than this," before most Italians had ever heard an engine roar. The Agnelli Empire began in 1899 when Giovanni Agnelli, a man with aristocratic blood but entrepreneurial fire, slapped down $400 to co-found Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino. This laughably small investment, roughly 13,000 modern dollars, or what today's Agnellis might spend on a single dinner, would spawn a fortune that could eventually buy and sell entire Italian regions if they were for sale. While America had Henry Ford, Italy had Giovanni Agnelli. Both men shared the revolutionary idea that automobiles shouldn't just be playthings for the rich, but vehicles for the masses, a concept that would transform society and make them obscenely wealthy in the process. By 1906, Fiat had gone public, and Giovanni, displaying the shark-like business instincts that would become genetic in his descendants, methodically eliminated his co-founders from the equation, buying them out one by one until absolute control rested in his aristocratic hands. During World War I, Giovanni pivoted his automotive factories to military production with the smooth agility of someone who understood that wars, while terrible for humanity, offer spectacular profit opportunities for those who can supply the machinery of death. The 1920s witnessed Giovanni's first power move beyond automobiles when he acquired La Stampa newspaper. Because when you're rich enough, why influence public opinion when you can simply own it outright? That same year, in 1923, the family made their smartest cultural investment by taking over Juventus Football Club, understanding that Italians might forget who made their cars, but would never forget who owned their beloved soccer team. Giovanni's banking ventures demonstrated remarkable foresight. He realized that selling cars was good business, but financing those purchases was even better, essentially getting paid twice for the same vehicle through the miracle of interest rates. The family's complicated tango with Mussolini began when Giovanni received a secret message from Il Duce himself in 1920, leading to a clandestine meeting that would entangle the Agnellis in fascist politics and require some creative historical editing after World War II. Giovanni's appointment as a senator in Mussolini's National Fascist Party in 1923 raised eyebrows then and questions now, though the family prefers to emphasize evidence that Fiat secretly supported the resistance, a convenient historical footnote that helped wash away fascist stains. After the war, when accusations of fascist collaboration swirled around him, Giovanni managed what few industrialists accomplished, emerging from the conflict with his reputation sufficiently intact and his factories still standing, ready to power Italy's economic resurrection. Giovanni established Exor in 1927, creating a financial fortress that would eventually manage the family's diverse empire while ensuring no outsider could ever wrest control from Agnelli hands, regardless of which family member temporarily fell from favor. The Agnelli patriarch's death in 1945 sparked conspiracy theories involving poison and political revenge, though official records cite natural causes. An appropriately mysterious end for a man who lived through 2 world wars while transforming Italy from an agricultural backwater into an industrial powerhouse. All this spectacular business success would soon be overshadowed by a grotesque irony. The family that built its fortune selling vehicles to the world would be repeatedly destroyed by them, starting with a seaplane propeller that would separate Giovanni's son from his head and unleash a century of almost supernatural tragedy. The first stroke of the Agnelli curse fell in 1935, when Edoardo Agnelli's seaplane slammed into the waters near Genoa. The propeller that should have driven him forward instead carved through his neck in a gruesome announcement that death would become the family's most loyal companion. Tragedy struck when Edoardo Agnelli, Gianni's father and heir to the Fiat fortune, died horrifically at age 43 when his seaplane crashed en route to Genoa, his body violently decapitated by the aircraft's propeller. The gruesome death orphaned the 14-year-old Gianni and his sister, leaving them in the care of their eccentric mother, Virginia Bourbon del Monte, a half-American aristocrat famous for keeping a leopard on a leash at the family estate. Death wasn't finished with the children, however, as Virginia herself perished just 10 years later when her car collided with a US Army truck in November 1945, dying a mere 15 days before Gianni's grandfather expired, eliminating 3 generations of Agnelli leadership in a single decade. Gianni himself would cheat death in 1952 when he crashed his Ferrari at tremendous speed, breaking multiple bones, but somehow surviving an accident that would have killed a less fortunate driver, a brush with mortality that didn't remotely slow his fast-living lifestyle. Perhaps the most heartbreaking chapter in the family tragedy unfolded in 1997 when Giovanni Alberto Agnelli, known affectionately as Giovannino, and officially designated as the heir who would lead Fiat into the 21st century, died of rare intestinal cancer at just 33. Giovannino had been widely admired in Italy for his industriousness, discretion, and even temperament. In a country where power was typically held by older men, he represented a promising young leader who had already demonstrated his business acumen by successfully reviving Piaggio, the scooter manufacturer. His death plunged Italy into nationwide mourning, with the kind of public grief usually reserved for royalty or beloved celebrities, and, more importantly for the family dynasty, eliminated the carefully groomed successor who had been positioned to take control of the sprawling business empire. Just 3 years later, in 2000, Gianni's only son, Edoardo, decided not to continue his existence by jumping headfirst in his pajamas from a 60-meter bridge outside Turin. A troubled addict who had never found his place in the family business and had a notoriously fractious relationship with his demanding father. Some people close to the family have suggested that Edoardo's passing may have been a final, desperate attempt to prove his courage to the legendarily tough Gianni, a man who had survived world wars, business crises, and political terrorism, but could not save his own son. These twin tragedies profoundly affected Gianni Agnelli, whose own health began to deteriorate rapidly afterward, ultimately succumbing to prostate cancer in 2003 at the age of 81. His funeral in Turin resembled that of a beloved head of state, with over 10,000 mourners paying their respects as a lone piper played Silenzio, an honorific melody traditionally performed for departed military officers, highlighting Agnelli's quasi-royal status in Italian society. The spectacular collection of tragedies has done nothing to diminish the family's business acumen, however, as the Agnelli empire expanded dramatically under Gianni's leadership, despite the personal catastrophes that repeatedly struck at its foundations. Between family funerals, Gianni somehow found time to execute ruthless business strategies that would transform his grandfather's provincial car company into an international empire. The same hands that buried his father, son, and nephew also signed deals that reshaped Italy's entire economic landscape and made the Agnelli name synonymous with power itself. Death may have ruled Gianni Agnelli's personal life, but in business, L'Avvocato himself was the undisputed emperor, a man who could seduce prime ministers with the same ease he charmed Hollywood starlets, and who turned personal tragedies into fuel for conquering global markets. Taking control of Fiat in 1966, after his grandfather's longtime associate, Vittorio Valletta, stepped aside, Gianni inherited a company that already dominated Italian manufacturing, but would soon face unprecedented challenges from labor unrest, terrorism, and global competition. His leadership coincided with Italy's years of lead, a dark period when communist paramilitary organizations like the Red Brigades carried out assassinations and kidnappings of high-profile businessmen and politicians, effectively declaring war on Italy's capitalist class. Despite being an obvious target with his extraordinary wealth and prominence, Agnelli refused to leave Turin, driving himself to work each day in a mid-range Fiat with a Ferrari engine secretly installed under the hood, a characteristic blend of flashy privilege disguised as common touch. His defiance during this dangerous era cemented his status as a symbol of courage and leadership in Italian society, earning him respect even from political opponents who admired his refusal to be intimidated by terrorist threats. Under his leadership, Fiat expanded its automotive empire through a series of strategic acquisitions, including stakes in Ferrari in 1969, Lancia in 1969, and Alfa Romeo in 1986, consolidating control over virtually every significant Italian automotive brand. The Agnelli empire expanded far beyond automobiles during Gianni's tenure, with the family business evolving from a primarily automotive-focused enterprise into a diverse conglomerate with interests spanning multiple industries. At the heart of this complex business web stood Decembra, which became the major shareholder in Giovanni Agnelli BV, which in turn controlled Exor, a chain of holding companies designed to maintain family control while minimizing tax obligations. Gianni's business acumen extended to international politics and trade. He counted Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, and John F. Kennedy among his friends, and used these high-level connections to advance Fiat's global interests while ensuring favorable treatment from successive Italian governments. His unique position as Italy's most powerful private citizen gave him influence that sometimes exceeded that of elected officials. When Fiat spoke, governments listened, simply because the company employed so many Italians that its decisions could make or break entire regional economies. Agnelli's genius lay in understanding that in the automotive industry's inevitable consolidation, those who survived would be those willing to adapt and merge, contrary to the egotistical notion that independence matters more than prosperity. His willingness to surrender operational control while maintaining strategic ownership stakes would ultimately save the Fiat brands from the fate that befell many independent European automakers who disappeared entirely during waves of industry consolidation. Yet even as the business thrived, the family dynamics grew increasingly toxic, setting the stage for epic inheritance battles that would make Shakespeare's dynastic tragedies look like minor family squabbles. For all Gianni's business genius, the one thing he couldn't control from beyond the grave was how his grandchildren would handle their extraordinary inheritance. 3 siblings who would transform the Agnelli billions into a Broadway-worthy drama of lawsuits, fashion disasters, and enough high society gossip to keep Italian magazines in business for generations. When the dust settled after Gianni's funeral, his 3 grandchildren emerged from the family chaos like characters from different movies. John in a corporate thriller, Lapo in a fashion documentary with adult content warnings, and Ginevra in an understated art house film that critics love but nobody watches. John Elkann, the buttoned-up firstborn with all the personal flash of a tax accountant, grabbed the family throne at 28 when his grandfather's other heirs were either gone or deemed too unstable to handle the billions. During the 2008 financial meltdown, while other billionaires panicked, John coolly walked into Detroit and scooped up struggling Chrysler for pennies on the dollar, ultimately creating automotive giant Stellantis and proving that beneath his boring suits beats the heart of a corporate shark. But it's middle child Lapo who delivers the real entertainment value in this family saga. A man who dresses like he raided a costume shop and whose personal indiscretions would make a rock star blush. Lapo's most infamous moment arrived in 2005 when emergency services found him unresponsive in a Turin apartment under circumstances so eyebrow-raising that Italian tabloids had a field day with details far too spicy for the nation's traditional morning coffee. The incident was so serious that Italian newspapers reported priests being summoned to his hospital bedside, while family PR people worked overtime, explaining why an Agnelli heir was discovered in a state of extreme distress in a residence that definitely wasn't on the society pages. After an extended wellness retreat, Lapo bounced back with remarkable speed, reinventing himself as a fashion entrepreneur whose social media presence showcases outfits so bright and mismatched they'd make a traffic light jealous. His business ventures include Italia Independent Eyewear, selling sunglasses at prices that would feed a family for a month, and Garage Italia Customs, where the super-rich pay ridiculous money to have their Ferraris painted in patterns that look like a toddler got loose with finger paints. Lapo's personal style might best be described as deliberate chaos. Suits in colors not found in nature, facial hair that changes shape weekly, and enough designer accessories to stock a small boutique. Despite dressing like he lost a bet with a fashion designer, Lapo remains fiercely proud of the Agnelli legacy, sporting a Juventus soccer team tattoo and frequently mentioning his grandfather in interviews, while simultaneously making choices that would probably make the old man cringe. The female third of this billionaire trio, Ginevra Elkann, has taken the quiet approach, running the family art foundation while cultivating the kind of understated elegance that suggests she actually read the handbook on how wealthy people are supposed to behave. In a small act of rebellion against family tradition, Ginevra doesn't even have a driver's license. Quite the statement for someone whose family fortune came from selling cars to the world. Meanwhile, Margherita Agnelli's 5 children from her second marriage exist in the shadows. Potential billionaires in waiting who must feel like they're watching their inheritance evaporate while featured in the world's most expensive family fight. The saga of Italy's unofficial royal family continues to evolve, proving that while building a $13.5 billion empire may be difficult, keeping it intact through generations might be the greatest challenge of all. Will anything remain of the legendary Agnelli legacy once the lawyers and judges have had their say? With that said, we'd love to see you in the comments. Were you familiar with the Agnelli family before this video, and do you think their immense wealth has brought them more happiness or suffering? Thank you for watching another episode of Old Money Luxury, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.